Hey everybody, my next guest is a very funny comedian who is a regular here at Governor's Comedy Clubs, but could also be seen performing all over New York and Long Island. Here she is, folks, the one and only Laura Patton. Laura, how you doing?
Hi. I wave like, hey, it's only you. So
Well, there's thousands of people watching right now.
all the fans out there, hello.
Yeah. We gotta get all the fans to stop.
Ignore the ring light in the glasses. I'm gonna try and sit a little lower.
Well, you look terrific. Where are you? Like in your office or you?
Yeah, I do. I have a home office. So when I'm not doing like my grown-up life, I have a real, I mean, it should be neater, but I've been working from home since 2000. I was an accountant by trade, then I'm in sales. So I set up
Nice.
so it was a home office, and I have like all like grown-up furniture and
Nice. So you got, not only do you have the comedy skills, but you also have the brains.
on occasion. Yeah. And sometimes you don't need to pull them out too much because
But being an accountant is tough, man. Like there's a lot of math involved. I'm not very good at math.
yeah, no, it is. And then the more accountants I let them know what my true, everyone's like, well, I haven't filed my tax in 10 years. The government wants me. I'm like, well, I can help you. They're like, well, I wanted money to pay it, so don't bother. So it seems to be, I think that's going to be my ladder when the shift starts and my overhead changes and, comedy's bigger, then I'm going to supplement it just doing tax returns for comics. I think that's my,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, because I'm not going to make a lot of money on that part of it. So we're going to shift the how I
Tax
make
returns for
money.
comics. Yeah, because
I'm
yeah,
like, is this
comics aren't
deductible?
yeah, they're not the most organized.
No,
Like they don't save receipts.
no,
They don't
no,
get pay stubs. Like they get paid like
no.
how
They
do
get
you
paid in
tax?
hush money.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of cash. So how do you file taxes if you're a comedian? Like let's say
Well, technically, so if any trade or business, that I conduct services, right? So how I'm paid. So if the show chooses to pay me in cash or no, it's my duty to report it. I mean, technically, is how it should look at. But if the aggregate total over the year is not over 600, someone doesn't have to let they have a requirement so they can deduct it on their side that they didn't pay you. And everyone is, for the most part, independent contractor. So everyone's 1099. So no one's subject to withholding. That the burden is on them. And of course, I'm sure everyone that gets paid here isn't like, well, let me set aside 35% of my $50.
right. Yeah, it's tough. I think like you know most comedians are better off if they marry someone with a
Stable, yeah, with like
401k.
W-2 and benefit. Yeah, that's the way. That's why when I see a couple, like I just did a show with Christine Meehan, who's married to Aaron Berg, and Bonnie, and then Mark Norman's wife, and there's another, I think Mike Becky, like these double comedy, which I'm sure like, oh, they must be so much fun at kitchen table. Like the grown-up stuff, it must be torture.
I thought so they're not your clients. I thought you were like handling
No,
their
no,
taxes.
no. Right now, I have one client that I don't even want to say his name, but
Right.
he
Yeah.
hadn't filed for years, and we untangled a mess and a half, and it worked well. And we wrote sad letters and got penalties waived and stuff like that,
Wow.
and got him out of a big jam. So I have one satisfied customer, and then I have two Long Island comics that are on the hey, I haven't done anything for years, and I have one the government's looking for me. So they're
Wow, you're like the Andy Dufresne of Long Island comedy scene, you know?
I'm Deacons. I was thinking about maybe setting up some kind of trust fund for my kids' educations.
Oh, I see.
You remember Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption? You ever seen Shaw?
right. Yeah. I'm the Tim Robbins. I wasn't sure of his name. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my job to just get people out of trouble. I'm like, but I'm not signing it or nothing. Like you gotta, kind of thing. Because there's like a lot. I don't know. And then if people start getting paid, as people go electronic, like whenever there's a trail, there's a problem, obviously. So if people start getting Venmo, or Venmo is now goods and services.
Ah, so
I
they
think
could
it's like
track, the government could track.
1099K. Yeah. So they were,
Oh.
so if some people do teaching or any type of you know, comedy lessons or comedy school and pay people through Venmo and stuff like that. They start to, there's something in Venmo that triggers sometimes, is it for goods and services, and then you're like, it's a gift. You're like, really? Like once a week the same person gives you $150, but okay.
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to do anything these days without a paper trail now, unless it's straight up cash. But now a lot of people pay through Venmo. Yeah.
And you have to hope that the person giving it to you wants to hide their cash just as well, because that's truly the best transaction. Or if you've done something for, I mean, listen, I'm not advocating not reporting income, but the point is that is the one without a trail.
Right.
And then all your expenses again. And because comedy is expensive, like any trip into the city, I know it seems like you have no overhead, it's you and a mic, but you spend getting places. And it's for, like, Peaches and I just went, we did a show in Pennsylvania. I think net, if we, I mean, she headlined, so she got a little more, but we got done with like gas and tolls and Panera. And I mean, I stayed over, she didn't, but to get to Phoenixville just because
it adds up, and then it doesn't, like it's definitely a labor of love in the beginning for comedians. You got to love it.
You don't do this because you're like, I'm doing it to make a buck. You're like,
You're not in it for the money, especially in the beginning. You're doing it because you love it.
Not. And I'm starting to roll in this. You know, we'll get to that, but things are starting to that for the past like 5 or 6 weeks. I've been getting paid every weekend. Oh my God, I'm giddy.
Yeah, you're flying up the ladder for
yeah,
sure.
No, and I appreciate it. And everyone's been so nice. You knock wood, I've not had, you know, a difficult experience, and anyone I met has been nothing but supportive and kind. And you know, Governors has been wonderful to me. And Jane, I can't say enough about, you know, and Tony and Andy when I go in there, and all the comics that I meet subsequent as a result of there. Oh, you want to do this? You want to come do, you know? So
you should
good.
Yeah, it's been, because you know, I've seen you do stand up a few times. I've seen you at the comic strip in Manhattan. I've seen you at Governor's a time or two. And I couldn't believe that you've only been in for a few years, because you're definitely a natural, and you have like a full package on stage, meaning like stage presence, likability factor. You got a great voice, both literally and through your comedic you know, topics. When did you start in stand-up?
No, thank you. That's really kind. When you guys say it, it means a lot. Like when my friends are like, "You're so good," I'm like, "Oh, you don't know." that was my Olga for a second. I'm sorry.
That was great. Like I heard it. It felt like you channeled Olga right through.
No,
yeah.
it's like, yes, I do. It's I started in January 2020. I said I was going to take a class at the Cellar. I had been trying to take it, and I took the class with Rick Crone, who is another like gift to me. He's become my personal friend, and I just adore him. And then, you know, in February, he's like, "There's this thing going around. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep meeting."
Right.
Then, like 2 weeks later, it was like, because it was supposed to be, I had a show on Easter, so you know, you do 5 weeks in the Cellar, you perfect the one joke. I was like, I can't make friends anymore in high school because I like how I used to, giving hand jobs on the bus, like whatever. Like that was like my big, you know, it was about back to school night, right? I missed back to school night. And that joke was just, you know, Easter weekend on a Saturday afternoon, I was going to do a show at the Cellar, you know, amazing at, you know, the Village Underground, because part of Rick's, you know, showcase, the beauty is, you know, you have footage.
Please welcome to the Comedy Cellar, back to the Comedy Cellar, Laura Patton, everybody.
At first I thought it was so cool, and now people are like, don't use that footage because we know it's not really, you're trying to trick people about it, Cellar footage and stuff. So
oh God.
I've since learned, you know, the difference, but it was a big deal to like stand on that hallowed stage where like you could be there, and Dave Chappelle just stood there the night before, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I was going to have all my friends come and make a whole, you know, then we were going out for dinner after, and then the world shut down, and Rick was going to off Broadway with his show, The Bedwetter, with Sarah Silverman, and he had just done stuff with Secession and Maisel, and he was a working actor, and Ray Donovan, and just the world shut down, and you learn then the have and the have-nots, like who was able to earn income and a living still. So at that point, I was still working for a KPMG, like a Big Four accounting firm, And there was a woman I met through Idaho. I mean, she was from Washington and Idaho, but she was taking the class. She used to fly in. And Rick is like, look, I'm going to try the Zoom thing and let's see. And there's no show, but let's figure it out. And he perfected like putting like people's scripts in the chat and who went first. And when that session was over, like there was no show. And he's like, do you guys want to do it again? And weirdly, we were like, I wanted to help Rick, you know, and I'm like, well, I'm still working. And it got to be, you know, like I feel like that dog thing, like who rescued who? Like, I looked forward to it every like Thursday night. It was from 7 to 10. I was in total joy in my office, and we wrote and we worked on, and you know, as it got later, like it looked like we weren't coming out of it. We tried Zoom showcases and then shutting the center, but it was so hard. I mean, you know, seasoned people struggled with it. So it was just so awkward, but I didn't have to memorize it. So we had like a teleprompter and lighting. And I did that in April of 2021, and things slowly opened up a little. And as a result, Jody, who was in the class, you know, these 18 months of writing, Jody was coming to New York. And then for a week, I did like my first mic in like November 2021. And I ran the light in West Side, and Clayton Fletcher was like ready to kill me. And I didn't even know what a light was. And, oh my God. And he's still like, every time I reach out to me, he's like, aren't you the one that ran the light? I was like, oh, fucking give me a break.
Oh, yeah, see how much attention she wants? You see? That proved my point.
Yeah, you got to get over it. Yeah.
I know, move on. It was my first time. And she had an opportunity to go to a show in Poughkeepsie for Bob DeBono. So I was like, listen, you came all this way and was so kind to me. Let me drive you to Poughkeepsie. And we got to the show, and Teddy Smith and Ashley Austin Morris were on the show. And I was like, Jody, don't give them a ride home. Like, I don't know if they're weirdos. Like, don't know. 5 minutes later, she's like, I told them, they're so nice. We'll drive them home. And that you know, that little thing, I fell in love with Teddy in the front seat. Jody fell in love with Ashley in the back seat. And the two of them have been so gracious to me. And Teddy the next day was like, I'm going to be doing work at the Pair. And we were going to the Cellar. And Jody's like, why don't we just go to the Pair? And I think something about us coming, and Teddy was another one. A movie was coming out that wasn't there, and he was bigger and slower. And then just digging out, and financially people were getting help in the beginning, and then that stopped. And these were dark times for comics, that was all they had. And I just took a shine to Teddy and him to me, and by proximity. So then he was doing a show with Governor. So just because I was near him, I think John Batera was like, hey, do you want to do a show in Mohegan Sun? I was like, you know, Bringers and stuff. But those things like Teddy proximity, or do you want to do that? And then I was super worried that I didn't want to suck and make Teddy look bad or Rick look bad. And just by being with that, I mean, we got over the people like, oh, they're fucking, and I'm like, we're not, and don't tell my husband, but right. And but it's that piece of it. He's been so kind, and I don't write with him, so I write with a couple other people, or I always write with Rick. But Teddy is amazing. Like when I do a show, sometimes my sister will be like, you're so much better when Teddy's there. Like I don't want to like
sometimes you need that. Yeah, there's something about
like
having the right person,
parent or try. And he took me, I was probably less than a year in. He was like, do you want to feature in Wisecrackers? And I was doing 20 minutes about the Amish and why people were honeymooning in the Poconos, because people weren't fucking, so they had to go to the closest place they can go, and and fires, and how do you put out a fire with Mennonites, and you after the third floor, like it's whatever. I mean, I think about it now, it was probably awful, but it was. And then from there, I met the Bruces, who were the nicest people, and I just really try and be as professional as possible. And as a result, for Teddy, you know, I met James, and then Ann just like, do you know about the Laugh Off? And I did that last summer. And it's just been a role, you know, just like getting momentum down the hill. And then from another friend, then I was in Aruba, then I met Kerry and Tom Cotter, and Kerry Louise has been really gracious to me, and she helped me with, you know, I got something from everyone. So with her, not that we, you know, it was very like comedy 101 with Rick, but we would watch, I'd show her a clip and she's like, what's with the so
so she'll break it down for you.
Yeah. And was like, stop doing that. So I never, you know, you'll never hear me say fun fact, you know, you know.
You used to do that. So
little things that they're like, don't ever, you know,
when you start
like,
to
like true story, you're like, stop it. So what did you just, everything you tell me was bullshit? They're like, no,
right.
This is a true story.
That's cool because, like you said, you could move fast in the comedy circles, and it is a lot of networking, and one thing will lead to the other, like you said. And when you get to guys like Teddy or even like Tom Cotter and his wife, what kind of like you were talking about a little bit about Kerry giving you advice like that, what's some of the takeaways you get from being around those people? Is it osmosis?
So what's amazing is they all are remember when they were my comedy age. So I had an opportunity, you know, I was friends before. I had one comedy friend before comedy, this guy, Ray Ellen, and Ray is a big host at the Cellar, and Ray's great. And Ray gave me an opportunity. I was in Aruba on vacation. He's like, when you're here, and I did a show in March, and it was Christine Hurley, Des Bishop, and Jared Freed. And he said Tuesday and Thursday, and I was like, oh, that's Ray being nice. And they were like, listen, Ray's not that nice, that he doesn't give out those. A lot of people go on vacation. Like, trust me, you were there anyway, but that was a big deal. And it was it was more of like a cruise audience crowd. And he does so much Aruba material. And then you get up and the audience is like, wait, you just spent 40 minutes talking to me, right? So the Tuesday night, I didn't do that great, but the Thursday I did better. So Tuesday, oh my God, I was like ready to throw up after, and you know, and oh, I just and so I called Terry, and she was able to be like, oh my God, the worst thing, you never want to go into the restroom after a set because you'll be in the stall and then you hear people being like, oh, that one was terrible. She's like, what? But here, you know, I feel like, you know, Tom's so accomplished, and like, she's like, oh, there was a show, and like David Tell didn't even look at me when I got off the stage one day, and just it all brings them back to when they were there, or I used to do this, or I'd much rather learn from their mistakes. You know, in my regular life, I'm the one that has to touch the hot stove. Right. I came to this too late, that I'm trying to do all I can. One, to take all my relationship skills of like I'm a relationship manager. That's my accounting now. You know, I sell consulting. Right. So to take all my grown-up skills to here, and then the other is to learn from their and if someone's like, don't do that, or if here's the punchline, that's the meat of the joke, use so much less to hold it up. That's really all you need, because it's all about, where did the joke come, where did the punch come? The less is more, you know, the every 15 seconds words with K, you know, the little thing. I'm not sitting there arguing like, oh, you don't understand this story. Right. You're missing the overarching. Shut up. Like what am I getting? I've moved over to 12 minutes, and actually very excited. Next weekend, I'm going to be featuring at the Smithtown Performing Arts Center with John Joseph. So that's nice. 20 minutes. And that's really beyond, you know, honored that James and Ange and them thought enough to give me that opportunity. And so, you know, so I don't want to blow it. So I'll take my other best 12 and 12 and like amalgamate them and push them. And I used to write on my hand, and I stopped writing on my hand. But, and but that all comes from the results of other people. You know, I don't have to, you know, there's so many things, like the premise used to be a lot longer. Who cares? You know, don't use pronouns a lot, because if you're saying he, she, I don't know who you're talking about. Don't use numbers, because people are doing the math.
What's the one you said, words with K? Is that a thing? K's
in a word? Did you know, like pickle?
It's funnier.
Any word with K is funnier.
Really?
Yeah. Chuckle fucker is a funny word.
It is a funny word.
See? When you talk to Seth Rogen was on something and he apologized because Kelly Clarkson was talking to him and said, no offense, but the amount of people that yell Kelly Clarkson at me from 40-Year-Old Virgin when Steve Carell got waxed, and Seth Rogen goes, I'm sorry, you just have so many K sounds.
Yeah. Wow. See, I never
See, Don Sills, how I can teach you.
Yeah. So I think too, there's so many reasons why, like, what are you, like 4 years old in the business? You're comedy 4.
Yeah. And you weirdly, I don't even know if you count COVID year, if I started, I really stepped on my first true stage, not a mic, would be November 2021. So
you're like a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So but as a 3-year-old in the business coming in, with all this life experience behind you, I think that's another great trait that a lot of the younger comics don't have yet. Not their fault. They just don't have life.
No, they just don't. And also, I struggle sometimes in Manhattan. I won't lie. It's Brooklyn. Forget about it. I do all my power to stay away from Brooklyn. But
why? What's up with Brooklyn?
I'm too woke or hip. I don't know.
Oh yeah, maybe the wokesters
and whatever. I think I did my first mic at the Tiny Cupboard, and I was like, I'm quitting because this is just awful.
Was it a rooftop at the Tiny Cupboard?
It was inside with the church pews now.
Okay,
and I was like, oh my God, this is so awful, and it was really bad. But Long Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, anyone that looks and talk, and I was talking to a guy this morning. He goes, you got that New York Italian thing. I try not to lean too much. I mean, which actually Elise DeLuce, who I was blessed to meet, and it's
she's awesome. Yeah,
very friendly to me. I met her I went with my family, picked up my Staten Island family, and went to the Stress Factory because I saw she was opening for Vic, to introduce myself to her. And the way I introduced myself to her, by that time we were talking in the bathroom for 20 minutes, spoke to Vinnie Brands, and got his opportunity to do a show the next week. Like, that's
nice. Yeah,
how I've been, pounding. But she's been really good. And she was like, you know what, maybe why, because my maiden name is Nicotra, but she said, if you're going to go the Italian thing, you must lean on it. And she goes, now it's working well for her, but she said, maybe don't advertise the Italian things, because sometimes you're Egyptian and sometimes I could be Puerto Rican, or sometimes I could be Jewish. And I joke around. I do urban shows all the time because Teddy always jokes because they're Sicilian and black. You know what I mean? So
right.
Don't let people wonder, or it's not that I'm hiding it kind of thing, but let them, you could be what they want. You're like, oh, you remind me of my Jewish neighbor or something like that.
Because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself.
Have a New York thing.
Right, yeah, because you could definitely pigeonhole yourself as just the Italian comic, and you don't want to do that. I mean, there's enough of those.
There's enough of it. Listen, I could ask Mike Marino, can I be on Make Italian Great Again, Make America Italian Again? And
yeah,
but then I think you just end up, I'm gonna like go somewhere with Mario Bosco at a cannoli festival or growing up Italian. Maniscalco's not waiting for me. Maniscalco has Pat McCann open for him. You know what I mean? There's only
you got to open. You need a
and Vic. I mean, there's enough. And when women do it, it just kind of comes off like, hey, not for nothing. Do I tell you? I had a bit in the beginning about, we did Zoom meetings with my family, and everyone had the same name. They were like, "Oh, Maron, which Joe are you talking to?" Like, whatever. It was fine.
Yeah, those are fun.
Mother, but it was cute. Like it stopped it cute. But I'm finding that the more I talk about my children, and my husband has definitely been, because that's like the passion, whatever. My 21-year-old, very quickly, he is looking for a job. I'm looking for a job for him. So I give out his phone number, and I'm like, did anyone call you? He's like, oh, I don't pick up numbers I don't know. Like, that's legit. That's not a bit.
Right. That's funny, and it's true too. Like, and that's the thing about when you do family material. Everybody can relate to it. It's not just like let's just say you only stuck to Italian. Now you're only isolating a certain audience, maybe.
So I lost half,
right,
or something. And I do a lot about. I'm working on this bit about, my mom would say, "Oh, don't cross your eyes; they'll stay that way." You know,
Right.
I'm like, and I met a guy with a Google eye, because I couldn't fact check her. Like that's the whole point. Like the internet, they could be like, "Oh, mom, you're full of shit." I can't. We didn't fact check, or you want. First of all, was I going to bike to the library? Or two, if she said it, I believed her. Like you believed your parents.
Right. Yeah,
So, like,
exactly.
years later, I met a guy with like a Google eye, and I was like, "Oh, did somebody like?"
I'm still waiting for hair to grow on my palms. It hasn't
I
happened
know.
yet.
That's another one. We're talking about bad luck by putting shoes on the table. I don't know if that's one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Rick and I were just working on a bit like, okay, so show me the one person, show the direct correlation. He's like, can you imagine like an arson, an arson inspector comes in after a fire. They're like, did you find the accelerant? He's like, no, but I found these shoes.
Yeah. That's good. That's
I
great.
found these shoes on the table. You're like, oh, I knew someday.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me, like that you have this. You're so funny, and you probably always were funny and embody this. That you waited, so like you waited to get to break into the game.
Yeah, okay. So there's a couple of things. So I grew up big. So my dad was a Buddy Hackett, Rodney Dangerfield, young comedian. My dad, Cosby records in the house. Sometimes my dad loved to laugh. My dad was a funny guy and larger than life, and he was a track guy, and he was funny and didn't even. He knew he was funny, but he didn't, he wasn't like going to stand up kind of thing. And so I was always around funny people. And then when I grew up in a hysterical town, I grew up in Elmont, and all my friends are funny. And the funnier guy got the attention of the circle. Whoever could tell the funny guy, one guy was like, this guy, Frank the Indian, he was doing blow. And he came out and he had like all this blow on his mustache. And they were like, Frank, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm saving it for later. And then he's like, later, like whatever, like stupid stories like that, like,
Right.
Like so you grew up with funny, and then I can't remember. I have to figure out if I ever can find it. Somebody was on Stern. I think he was talking to me. It might have been, I can't remember if it was Rock or Chappelle or whatever, and about funny, like what really dictates funny. And he said, are people living room funny or stand-up funny?
Right. Yeah.
And or kitchen table funny. And that's what made me invest in the class, because I didn't know if I was stand-up funny. I thought I was kitchen table funny. I thought I could hold court. I thought, I could tell, witty stories at like a conference or stuff like that. But what was the differentiator? And that to me is the distinction of, and there are a lot of people that, you can tell, you go to early mics, this guy's like, so I was with my friends and we were at this strip club and it was hysterical. And Joey Boots and Joey Mike was there. And I was like, holy shit, your mother. But like,
Right.
I don't know Joey. Like, I don't. And they think that's hysterical because their friends have been laughing at that story for years, but it's terrible. So you become lazy, like leaning on that. So that added to being funny, and I make the investment into whatever material content I put out there. I try and make to be someone's gonna laugh at it. Or I also get all dolled up when I go to the show, that even if like when I go to the show and someone's like nice boots, I'm like, I at least got a compliment.
Right. Smart.
So I'm like, I'll stay dressed. Or the other thing is, like 14 years without getting into the whole story of it, I went to treatment and I'm sober. So I was,
Awesome.
forget I added booger sugar to my, at 40, I thought it was a good idea.
Right. Yeah.
So went to rehab, and that's a whole pile of stories of funny or whatever. So I actually just had a show this morning at 6:30. If you think about it, I celebrated 12 years sober, and
Awesome. Congratulations.
I qualified at one of my local meetings, and this, you can get as many as 100 people at 6:30 in the morning in a church basement. And that was where someone planted the seed, because, I wasn't up there doing shtick, but I was honest. And that people can smell. It's the people that, the comics that are good. Like they're legit, like Kevin Hart is a monster of storytelling. And just, I just saw him last week. He did this little corporate thing. I mean, not a corporate, like a charity thing. And he just takes you on the ride for the story, and you really feel like he's telling you that story for the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, like, if I can get that, like, people like, what type of story, like a Birbiglia story to be there is insane, but he just makes it look so effortless. I mean, there are punchlines and stuff. They're masterful. So I'm also still a fan of comic. I know a lot of comics don't watch other comedy anymore because they're like, I don't want to parallel thought, and also it's very hard. I don't know about you, but I struggle to laugh. So like, I saw Wanda Sykes's special. I was laughing out loud. It was so good. And then, as blessed as I am, like 3 days later, I'm at dinner with Rick at the Olive Tree, and who comes walking around the corner? Keith Robinson and Wanda. And because I'm
nice.
Rick or with Teddy, they stop. And then I fangirl, and then Rick and Teddy get mad at me, but whatever, One time I'm outside with Teddy, and Michael Che is like, what up, Teddy? And Teddy's like, sup? Like, I'm like, oh my God, Michael Che, you're taller than you look on TV. And Teddy's like, shoot me a look like, stop it, fangirl.
It is hard to be cool around them because whenever you hang out around the Comedy Cellar, they're all comics are everywhere. They're all in the
Everywhere.
streets.
Like Andrew Schultz is eating lunch there, and then and if I'm with Rick, like, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden Sarah Silverman slides into the book and sitting with Rick, and I'm like, there with Sarah Silverman.
Right,
and then
yeah.
Colin Quinn comes in. I'm like, aren't you Tim Gage's cousin? And he's like, I've never.
That's great. You did that. I love that.
He's like, I've never had anyone call me that, but yes, technically. And he's like, are you Rick's date or his nurse? And I'm like, stop it.
That's funny.
So because of Rick and Teddy, I will, be on the street, and there's Yamanika talking to us like, this is Teddy, so that I've been very fortunate to. I'm keeping like a folder, just sort of Tim Dillon in an airport, and Shane Gillis, and just the amount of people, like Mike Birbiglia came over. I was like, I just did a show in a temple with your mother-in-law. And Rick is like, oh my God, who are you?
I think it's good to still have a bit of that fandom. It makes it still makes it like I still have that too. When I see some of these guys, these comics, especially ones that were around when I was younger, like a David Tell or somebody like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep you cool and just be like,
oh my God. And he is, I cannot, James has been ridiculously good to me as of late, and I'm putting in the work or whatever reason. I'm not even going to question it. I show up, I entertain the audiences, and he appreciates me. And I stop by, whatever, the long and short of it. Rich and Chris were doing a show, and Teddy and I were coming by we did something for John LaRocchia. His wife's been ill, so I've been helping out John. And we stopped by, and the show was ending, and James goes, come by tomorrow. Dave's doing the show. So I'm like, oh, come by. What does that mean? But so I get all dolled, and I get there, and James is like, oh, you can sit at my table. And so I'm texting Teddy. I'm like, fucking sit at my table. And then I'm like, I don't come in and sit in your table, but I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, and I get free mozzarella sticks, and I'm like, okay, I'll make the best of it, maybe at the end I'll take a picture. And 10 minutes before, because there was a 7 and a 9:30, 10 minutes before 7, James calls me over, because you never know when someone, like, he comes out with James Madderin, he could bring out his whole crew, and Olga was on, and James is like, hey, why don't you host? I mean, beyond, and Dave, he's also from, I live in Rockville Center now, and he was from Rockville Center. We would like, he was so gracious. And then he said, are you doing the 9:30? I go, look, I don't know. And he's like, well, I would like you to. And James had asked Joe Cravella, and then the show was late. So many things went wrong. Some guy got taken out in an ambulance. He fell. He had like a seizure, and then the show started late. I mean, the 9:30 show didn't get off till 10:30. And James came out, and Dave said, give her time.
So Dave himself wanted you to.
Dave himself.
That's
and he said, so I said, 5, 7. He goes, do 7. If you're doing well, do not. He goes, go ahead. And then when the show was over, at the end, he like bumps mics with people. And at the first show, he just had 3 mics. It was James, him, and Olga. But the second show, he invited Joe and I, and was actually talking probably more to Joe and I, and after he was telling stories and his first mic, and he, ate it there, and he was there with Mulaney and the hallowed halls and the people that came up. It was such a gift to me of how gracious. And he's like, oh no, we'll make sure we take a picture on stage. And I'm still like, that experience was just
That's huge.
proximity, right place, right time. I've yet to run into anyone that has not been great, but Dave Attell, for whatever, maybe being in Long Island or what, has been beyond, and that opportunity will stay with me for a really long time. I didn't have to be on the 9:30. I could have, pinched myself, and I mean, that was so gracious of Dave. And the ones like that remember coming up, and Sarah Silverman was at the cell. I'm not name dropping, but anyway, I was there with Rick, and she came over and she's like, I'm on the whatever time. So Rick goes, oh, don't you just drop in? She goes, I would never, because I would come from Jersey. She puts in her veils.
Wow.
And, because she said the amount of people that bump me, she's like, I would, waiting to go. And then all of a sudden they're like, Ray Romano's here or Jerry's here. And she's like, no, Marty was so happy. And, the audience loves it. But Sarah's like, I just spent like $8 to get here. And that was my, don't bump me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's good that, like you said, that these comics, these very successful ones, still remember those times. And like you talked about, like, Tom Cotter and Carrie Louise, and now Sarah Silverman, and even like Dave Attell. I feel like these comics, when and that's one thing I love about the camaraderie amongst comedians, is that after, like, Kevin James is good like that too. They give back to the scene. They give back to the comics in a way. So like Dave Attell, asking you to do both shows and to do some time.
He didn't have to.
Yeah, so that's big, because and then one day, not too far from now, probably you'll be a big name on the scene, and you'll give back to some young kid,
to someone else. And if there's a way that I can repay the favor or something like that. But it's, Kevin Hart started something, it was called Comedy Gold Mines, and it was a podcast, and he just spoke. He now has expanded it to other people, whether he ran out of comics or thought it really got some legs to it. But everyone says, without 10 years, like, everyone's like, oh, Matt Rife is below. Matt Rife has been grinding since he's 17 years, 11 years. He said the week before that TikTok, he got paid $150 at Stand Up New York, and there were 8 people there. Like, doing the same material. His material didn't suddenly change. It just, right place, right time. He was on Wild and Out and stuff like that. But he said he had done Stand Up New York for $150 and nobody was there.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
They, Jessica Kirshon, who is a monster and
love her,
amazing. Yeah. And, I mean, to the movie, and De Niro, and, all the things that could have went her way. She's been grinding. I've been seeing her locally for so long, putting in time, putting in a spot. I went to a taping of just all women down at the Stand. I mean, I don't even know what it came of it. It was Tammy Pescatelli and her. Now Jessica, between her crowd work and she's hot. If you tell her that, she'd be like, I've been doing this. Like, how am I hot now? But okay.
It's weird how
it's such a fickle business, but I just want to be ready and prepared. And, maybe it's 5 years, 70, I'm just clearly a window. I don't know anyone getting past at the Cellar that started at 54. I'm realistic, but I said to someone, like, what my goals are is, one, I want to someday film something that when I'm old and gray, I can be like, oh, I'll pull this up on YouTube, because somebody was saying whatever, this whole long story. Anyway, the guy had ALS, and all that's left of this person, I mean, you can have possession or whatever, are these clips. He was a drummer, and clips just go in perpetuity, pictures. And it honestly is your spoken word now that will have legs. And thank God to mediums of the clouds and different platforms. So to me, I want to someday, And even if it winds up being on YouTube and I do it at Governors and it maybe gets legs someday, because how many projects do we see that were great that just didn't have the money or something behind it?
Right.
Rick Chrome is a perfect example. He has an amazing documentary called Oh Rick that I don't know why it's not bigger. It's just great, and you can just find it on YouTube. But I want that, and then I want to somehow work, because if I'm, all the studies say this is an aging population, and the amount of people that are going to be 60 and over in the next 5 years, they're going to laugh, and they're not going to laugh at TikTokers. They're going to laugh at, peeing when they sneeze and just for men. And so that older generation is also an older generation with money that you didn't have. So people living at, it doesn't have to be the villages, but there's so many on Long Island. Do they have comedy night at the Vanderbilt? Has anyone ever approached all the, at the, I can't think of the one right now, not the Camelot, the one in Comac. Like there's a couple of those with high-end clubhouses. Has anyone approached them about coming in and bringing in comedy nights because they're already having steak dinner or something? So why not, if I'm aging, why not lean into that? So that's the business. When I see like, Corey Kahaney and Vanessa Hollingsworth and Carol Montgomery and Leanne Lord and women that are legit hysterical, still work. It's a little, listen, as you know, it's a young person's game. And sometimes it's, if you're not Indian or gay or trans or so, everyone has to, lately it's been like, do you have a, when you looked at
like
who won, like, just for laugh, new faces, someone was like, this Alaskan trans. I was like, oh, come on. You can't even.
Yeah. No, I think I could see you still getting past it at the Comedy Cellar. I think, first of all, if you're 54, you look amazing for 54.
Oh, thank you. No, 55, double nickels.
Wow, 54. God bless you. I'm 52. I'll be 53 in next August.
See, you guys have the grays come
out. But yeah, so I look older than you. You look young. You still look like you're like late 30s, 40s.
Oh, I will take it.
So I think you got that going for you. Plus, like I said, too, you have like a presence about you that is original, and it just comes across, and it's just perfect. Like, I could see them trying to build a sitcoms. No one's doing sitcoms anymore, but you know what I'm saying. Like build things around you, because I think you have a certain presence and demeanor. I think that's why.
I appreciate that. And some, I'm, in the beginning, I was sort of like, how come so and this and Ray is like doing just, there's a room for all, like, you never know, right place, right time. And I watched all the, the dark side of comedy or whatever. And Gaffigan said, I think he was talking about Greg Giraldo. Gaffigan said, this is the only business. Like if I'm a bricklayer and for 12 years, I've been laying brick and I've been getting good at it, people are going to refer me and know me, and my reputation is going to grow. And there's no way that I can't be one of the best bricklayers. He goes, comedy is the only thing. Like, I just stopped saying to Teddy, how you're not famous. I will watch his material, be like, you people and all this trash yours. And I still laugh, and I'm retarded, you're retarded. And that, like, can't read Kenny. I mean, Teddy is magical.
He's great.
Great. And a rubber face, and is me and Ange laugh at because I'm singing for him Saturday. I'm helping out something with John in West Hampton, but Saturday, and oh my God, the staff is like, how much more time? I go, oh, forget it. So I'm like lighting him in the back, like, Teddy, it's hour 10, we're done. Staff wants to go home, and then he's like, so I had this dog, and Angela, you're like, oh shit, there's 15 minutes. Here comes the dog bit, but he gets lost, and. I do still try and write verbatim, because for me, I use the wrong, my husband sometimes, like, he'll come and he'll be like, it wasn't that. And it's the same material. And he's like, you just didn't hit it right, or you dropped the wrong word. Or he goes, I wasn't sure, you didn't say eye doctor, you just said doctor. And you don't know that unless and the people that record all the time, I give them so much credit, that are so diligent, that record and go back and look and timestamp and
Analyze themselves. Yeah.
because that I struggle with looking at myself. Like I'm like, oh, that angle, that shirt, that this, my hair, all my like squirrels get in the way. So I usually have to wait almost 3 days before I look at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, and when you did it with the movie, I'm like, that was so amazing, like to watch and I couldn't imagine like watching dailies or what, and
It's
someone's
tough.
giving you advice. You're like, oh, but did you see my, my back tits? You saw
Exactly.
my back
You
tits.
just notice that. Yeah, you notice the things that. Yeah, like even we just had a screening of the film a couple weeks ago again, and every time it starts, I just get like, oh god, I get that squirmy feeling, like, oh god. But so I know what you mean about watching it back.
I know. Then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll wait. And then sometimes my book. And then for a while, I was like closing my eyes a lot. I'm like, and Carrie said, stop looking down, like hold your head up to accept. Because if you look down, then they think either you don't believe it. So
Right.
I try.
Confidence.
And I walk too much and I trip over the court. Like I do such, it was very nice. I went to Christy Miller's taping and her friend Gina said, she goes, you're very good, but you're new. And I was like, oh, what? How can you tell? I mean, she's a manager at the Cellar. And it was like, she's like, your voice and your perspective is very good and your material is very different. But so you're new, and I would give anything to not appear new-ish kind of thing. But I think there's things that there's no way around it that you don't shake that without the first. I don't care how many mics you do or something like that, and you could do bar shows and small, and I can go up and down in Manhattan and do stuff. 8 people in a bar, I don't think is going to make me better versus like, Carrie had this huge fundraiser and it was 300 people on a Sunday night, or David Tell was 300 and 300 back. I mean, that those Firehouse in Sayville packed, so that those and those are still few and far between for me to get. And my goal is I want to be the worst one on the show. I want to be at such a level. So I started produce, do like all, spoke of the way, like we talked earlier about the podcast.
Right.
So I produce, which is so much. I give John Butera a lot of credit. It's a lot of work to
and dealing with a lot of egos.
A lot of egos, and how come you didn't use me? And equipment. I just had to meet John in Panera, and I'm like rigging lights, and we did a show last week 2 weeks ago in Sayville, and John couldn't make it, so I wound up like being the John of the show, and we were running lights or whatever, and when they left, the guys were like, that's your headliner? He was just a lighting guy. I was like, I know, like welcome to local,
right?
But I produce a show, I call it Reverse Commute, and I just have city comics to come out.
Oh, that's cool.
James was kind enough to, I was making a little noise with the show at some local bars, and James invited me, to, hey, why don't you bring this show in? And I got a Friday night in Belmore, and
nice.
So I got the brokerage, and I did one of my next one's going to be in January, and I have. Do you know Daniel Simonson?
Sounds familiar.
He's a Norwegian comic with this flat. I really try and get people that I still laugh at. So if Daniel and Teddy, he's like, I haven't had Teddy.
Nice.
And Rick
nice.
comes and hosts, and then I do it. And my friends just loved it. My last one was Brian Scalero and Tom Escherman.
Love
and
Brian Scalero.
This new guy to watch. Be on the lookout for this kid, JJ Curry, who just came up here from Florida. It was
I think we met him at the
you met him that night, but then I brought him to
yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, that weekend I had my show in brokerage, and just really good people that make me want to be better. And luckily, when that's my show, a lot, listen, probably 60% are my friends or whatever, but it forces me for those show to try and do newer, because they're not, how many times are people going to come here about my angry period? You know what I mean?
Hey, it's always people always want to hear about the angry period.
Listen, it's a good joke. And what I did is I used to be like, oh, I'll tell you about an angry period. And I used a girl from high school's name who was a tough, badass girl, right? And then my friends were like, we're going to find her and tell. And I'm still afraid of her. I graduated high school in 86. I'm still afraid of this girl, Annette DiGiacomo. Like, she's going to find me.
So he's like, Mom, it was really aggressive. You used an angry period. I was like, bro, an angry period is what happened to Annette DiGiacomo in 1984 in the junior high cafeteria in white pants.
And then if you get on to Netflix, then you got to really be careful of that bully. She's gonna definitely find you then.
Oh, Annette is so. Listen, if I fucking get on Netflix, I'm using Annette DiGiacomo. If I'm that big, fuck it.
Yeah, you have
Bring
to.
it, Annette.
She'll be your number one fan after that.
Let's see, Annette. See what you got.
Laura Patton, you're the best. I appreciate you so much. Tell everybody where they could find you and follow you and all that good stuff.
So you can follow. So it's Laura Patton Comedy on Instagram. I have two 27-year-old boys that are helping me fix it because they were like, your page is bad. So there's more to come. A podcast is in the works with Carla and Chris, and I don't know, we might be the Wet Dogs, we might be Down the Rabbit Hole. I don't know, but something's coming. This weekend, you could find me at the Brokerage. emceeing with Teddy Smith. Next weekend, I'll be at the Smithtown Performing Arts Center. The weekend after that, I'm with Carrie Louise at a private event on the 18th. And then I'm back at Governor's with Carol Montgomery and Women of a Certain Age on December 2nd. So from 2 years in, I think that's a fucking nice lineup.
You are killing it. You are killing it. Man, I'm definitely rooting for you. I love you. I think you're great. And you know, again, you don't look 54. You look amazing. I can't believe it. Oh, 55. You look amazing. So
you should see my fupa, but we'll leave that for another.
Well, God bless you. We will see you soon. Laura Patton, everybody.
Thank you, Don Sills. I'll see you on campus.
See you.